For countless generations, the narrative of humanity's expansion was built upon tangible, yet sparse, relics, scattered bone fragments, rudimentary artifacts, and the silent ruins of long-lost habitations. These remnants, the tools and the occasional burial plot only offered glimpses into the vast global movements of our ancestors. Yet, these clues were fundamentally incomplete, bearing silent witness to a history that lacked a voice. Then, a monumental discovery unlocked a new era, the ability to extract and sequence ancient DNA, aDNA, from skeletal and dental remains, sometimes preserved for upwards of 40,000 years. Instantly, historical inquiry transcended mere theory. The past could now be precisely charted, measured, and substantiated at a molecular level. This scientific endeavor was initially painstaking. DNA naturally degrades over time, splintering into minute fragments that once seemed impossible to piece back together. For decades, this degradation represented an absolute limit to what the ancient remains could reveal. However, rapid progress in sequencing technologies turned that limitation into a portal. By meticulously assembling these tiny, degraded strands, researchers gained the power to reconstruct the entire genomes of individuals who lived millennia ago, people who had no written language, whose only enduring record was held within their genes. What followed was a cascade of revelations, fundamentally altering our understanding of human origins. In the profound silence of a remote cave system in Siberia, a tiny finger bone sliver was unearthed. Sent for routine laboratory examination, it was initially assumed to belong to either Homo sapiens or a Neanderthal. Yet, the resulting DNA analysis was electrifying. The genetic material belonged to an entirely distinct and previously unknown lineage of archaic humans. They were named the Denisovans. This finding instantly broadened the human story, confirming the existence of a whole species never documented in the fossil record, but whose genetic code lives on within modern populations today. How many other forgotten branches of humanity once walked the earth, and how many are still embedded in our DNA? This was just the beginning. In Europe, aDNA extracted from ancient gravesites unveiled a complex pattern of consecutive migration waves that fundamentally reshaped the continent's genetic tapestry. The initial inhabitants, small, mobile groups of hunter-gatherers, were met and then superseded by early farmers migrating from the Near East, who introduced agriculture and new forms of technology. Then, thousands of years later, a third, colossal wave arrived, the Yamnaya pastoralists, originating from the Eurasian steppe. They expanded with ferocious speed, and their genetic signature replaced nearly 70% of Europe's ancestral pool within just a few generations. Ancient DNA tells a stark story of this transition, revealing genetic scars of violent conflict. Many male lineages were eradicated, while women from local groups were frequently absorbed into the invading populations. The rise and fall of ancient cultures were, at their core, genetic upheavals, permanently altering the very fabric of human ancestry. Across the vast Bering Strait, another historical certainty crumbled. For decades, archaeologists maintained that the first human arrivals in the Americas occurred approximately 13,000 years ago, via the land bridge connecting Siberia and Alaska. But aDNA painted a different, deeper picture. The genome of a young girl discovered in Montana, dating back 12,600 years, held a critical secret. Her ancestors had inhabited Beringia, a vast, ancient landmass now underwater, for millennia before making the final push southward. Even more startling was the genetic evidence from an ancient Brazilian skull, showing connections to Australasian populations, strongly suggesting an unexpected, earlier migration route. Could humans have navigated the sea routes to the Americas long before the ice retreated and the land bridge became fully accessible? The genetic data indicated this was plausible. The mysteries extended across the Pacific. The Polynesians, renowned as some of history's most accomplished ocean navigators, spread their culture across thousands of miles to islands as distant as Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand. Tracing their lineage through aDNA pointed decisively back to Taiwan, where their expansive journey began some 4,000 years ago. Their voyages were not merely random drifts but intentional, determined explorations, fueled by the persistent human drive to move and to discover. A further, incredible finding emerged. Genetic markers present in South American indigenous groups suggested contact between Polynesians and Native Americans centuries before any European arrival. The scope of their travel and the exchanges that took place remained tantalizingly elusive. In Africa, the cradle of all humanity, genetic research continues to unearth long-lost branches of ancient populations. Some lineages vanished without a trace, while others contributed their genetic footprints to various modern groups. In Asia, scientists detected genetic traces of yet another unknown archaic human species, one that left behind no identifiable fossils or name, only its molecular imprint. Had they lived contemporaneously with early Homo sapiens, much like the Neanderthals and Denisovans? The search for these missing pieces of the puzzle is only beginning. Crucially, ancient DNA informs us not just about where we came from, but how we endured. It details genetic adaptations that enabled survival, resistance to extreme cold among Arctic inhabitants, mutations for high-altitude survival in the Tibetan Plateau, and immunity to catastrophic diseases. The Black Death, the most devastating pandemic in recorded history, genetically reshaped the European population. Survivors passed on mutations that fortified their descendants against future plagues, a profound testament to the power of evolution working even during the darkest human periods. However, every major scientific advancement brings ethical complexity. Indigenous communities globally have voiced serious concerns regarding the study of their ancestors' remains and the extraction of their genetic heritage without explicit consent. In some instances, aDNA has validated long-standing oral traditions, proving that indigenous knowledge preserved fundamental truths that Western science once dismissed. In others, the findings have dramatically overturned deeply held cultural narratives, leading to tensions over identity and ancestry. The core question remains, who owns the DNA of the past, and who holds the right to interpret its story? Despite these necessary debates, one truth stands firm: ancient DNA has fundamentally rewritten human history, revealing lost migrations and ancestors, and revising timelines that stood for centuries. The story of our origins is no longer limited to relics, it is perpetually alive, written into the very code of our existence. Our species' greatest journey began long before written history, before the dawn of civilizations. For nearly 300,000 years, Homo sapiens flourished exclusively in Africa, adapting to its varied environments. But eventually, a powerful impetus, perhaps climate change, competition, or innate curiosity, drove them to leave. Most scientists now agree that approximately 60,000 years ago, a relatively small group, perhaps only a few hundred individuals, began the pivotal journey out of Africa. Their unique genetic signatures, now carried by nearly all non-African people today, chronicle an exodus that irrevocably reshaped the globe. How did they survive the immense unknowns? They pressed forward, generation after generation, leaving their genetic traces in ancient bones and forgotten burials. Early evidence of their trek appears in the Arabian Peninsula, where small groups likely followed the coastlines. Yet, further complexity emerged with the discovery of a skull in Israel, dated to 100,000 years ago, far preceding the established main exodus. This suggests there were earlier, possibly failed, attempts at migration before the final great spread. The paths were never simple lines on a map. Some followed the shores of the Indian Ocean, leaving genetic marks in modern South Asians, while others battled inland through harsh, unforgiving deserts. Survival brought change. New mutations, shaped by the environments they encountered, led to adaptations, changes in skin tones to cope with varying solar radiation levels, immune systems that adapted to new diseases, and bodies that evolved to endure the challenges of foreign lands. A skull in a cave in Laos provided definitive proof of this early spread, linking those ancient individuals directly to the group that departed Africa, having reached the farthest reaches of the continent much earlier than previously assumed. The most profound realization came from studying indigenous Australians and Papua New Guineans. Their ancestors separated from other non-African groups over 50,000 years ago. To reach Sahul, the ancient supercontinent connecting Australia and New Guinea, they had to cross significant expanses of open water. These were not chance wanderers, they were deliberate seafarers, navigating the unknown and reaching lands untouched by human footsteps. As some journeyed east, others ventured north into the brutally cold expanses of Europe, where they faced an entirely different challenge: the Neanderthals. This encounter was neither a simple conflict nor a seamless absorption. The evidence lies in our own DNA. Every non-African population carries traces of Neanderthal ancestry, proof of a profound, intimate mingling. Neanderthal genes offered early Homo sapiens distinct advantages, such as enhanced immune system responses, aiding survival in unfamiliar territories. The mystery deepened in Siberia with the discovery of a young girl's bone. Her DNA revealed her to be a hybrid, her mother a Neanderthal, her father a Denisovan. This fusion suggests that the ancient world was a genetic melting pot, interwoven in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. As humans spread, they also began to alter the world dramatically. Tools reshaped landscapes, and the use of fire influenced animal populations. Simultaneously, the once abundant megafauna, giant sloths, towering mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, began to disappear. Did they succumb to overhunting, or were already occurring climate shifts to blame? The clues remain locked in ice and sediment. The journey continued, an unstoppable force across rainforests, tundras, and deserts. Humanity pressed forward, their genes leaving an enduring record of their choices and struggles. This single, ancient migration splintered into countless paths, leading to immense genetic and cultural diversity. Some groups remained isolated, their genetic signatures barely changing for millennia. Others merged, mixed, and evolved into entirely new populations. The fundamental truth, however, remains: every person alive today carries the echoes of that first great journey, the whispers of an ancient world encoded within their very cells. The world continued to change, relentlessly, particularly as the Ice Age gripped the planet. Vast glaciers advanced, temperatures plummeted, and survival became a relentless struggle against nature. For those moving north, retreat was impossible. It was a cycle of advancing and retreating ice, reshaping entire continents. Forests became icy tundras, rivers froze, severing migration routes. Animals adapted or perished, yet humans miraculously endured. How? Among the remains of Ice Age hunters, genetic traces reveal astonishing transformations, adaptations in metabolism, body temperature regulation, and even oxygen processing, subtle shifts that meant the difference between life and death in the cold. Early Siberians developed resistance to frostbite, producing more internal heat. Arctic dwellers evolved shorter, stockier frames to conserve warmth. A burial site in Sungur, Russia, showcased Ice Age hunters adorned with thousands of mammoth ivory beads, a glimpse of advanced craftsmanship and culture thriving despite the harsh conditions. Yet, their DNA revealed a distinct genetic branch that no longer exists. The frozen tundra of Ice Age Europe was already the dominion of the Neanderthals, masters of the cold who had adapted long before Homo sapiens arrived. But their numbers were dwindling. When modern humans arrived, the balance tipped. DNA evidence shows they did not simply clash, they mixed. The children of these unions carried the genetic legacy of both species. Ultimately, only one survived, but not without absorbing the genes of the other. The Ice Age also defined the true complexity of the Americas settlement. Ancient DNA shattered the notion of a simple, quick crossing. Instead, it showed that the first Americans were indeed trapped for thousands of years, isolated by massive glaciers in Beringia, before finally finding a route south. When they did move, they did so with incredible speed, reaching the southern tip of Patagonia within a few thousand years. Was this driven by following megafauna, or by an innate, unstoppable drive? The Ice Age served as a crucible, forging resilience. Those who survived carried a strong genetic legacy. Deep in the Tibetan Plateau, an improbable survival story unfolded. While scientists believe Tibetans settled there recently, aDNA revealed a much older adaptation. Even more remarkably, their ability to thrive in thin air came from an unexpected source, an inherited gene passed down from the Denisovans. The Denisovans, long extinct, had gifted Tibetans the ability to conquer the heights, an invisible thread connecting species across time. As the ice retreated, the world opened up again. But with retreat came consequences. The megafauna began to vanish. Was human hunting or the dramatic climate shift to blame? The debate continues. One certainty emerged: a new challenge awaited, not just against nature, but against each other. The narrative of human origins continued to be rewritten. Ancient DNA revealed the existence of ghost populations, groups that disappeared, leaving no visible trace of their existence, only their subtle genetic imprint. It was once thought that Homo sapiens entered a world devoid of other intelligent beings. This was a profound error. Neanderthals were in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, and DNA hinted at others. The bone fragment that identified the Denisovans was only the beginning. Their genes were found across Asia, Australia, and the Pacific, confirming widespread intermixing. Studying ancient African DNA, scientists found anomalies, genes that didn't match any known human group: Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, or Denisovans. These were the remnants of another lineage, an unknown ancestor, woven into the DNA of modern West Africans, a lineage lost to time and memory. Had they lived alongside early humans, only to slowly fade? The ancient world was far more complex than imagined. Even the bones of Neanderthal ancestors found in a Spanish cave carried traces of Denisovan DNA, further complicating the map of ancient species. Human history was not a simple straight line but a tangled web of connections. The journey of Homo sapiens was defined by these encounters, some intimate, some violent, all leaving behind a genetic trace, a strand of Neanderthal DNA in Europeans, a Denisovan immune gene in Tibetans, a hidden ancestor in West Africa. The ghosts of the past are everywhere, encoded in the very essence of modern humanity. Finally, the quiet revolution of agriculture began. For thousands of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, but around 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent, a transition began. Wild grasses were cultivated, and animals were domesticated. Ancient DNA revealed that the first farmers were a genetically distinct population from the nomadic hunter-gatherers. This transition wasn't arbitrary, it was accompanied by genetic selection. Mutations allowing adults to digest milk and adaptations for fat storage became more common as diets shifted. The human body itself evolved for a settled life. But this revolution was often violent. As farmers expanded, they displaced hunter-gatherers. In Europe, the genetic evidence is clear. For a time, they coexisted, but then a massive migration wave of Anatolian farmers swept the continent, largely absorbing or erasing the genetic legacy of the original foragers. The full story of human origins is still unfolding. With every new genome sequenced, another layer of complexity is revealed. The journey of humanity was one of relentless movement, profound intermingling, and constant evolution, the record of which is kept not in stone, but in our blood.